right, we are here. This is D-Day. This is the day we've all been waiting for. Can you believe we got this thing back from the body shop exactly 1 week ago today at about 6 o'clock in the morning? We dragged it back here as a roller. It didn't have anything in it. It didn't have a motor, didn't have a transmission, didn't have a wire in it, cooling system, intercooler system, fuel system, nothing. We've had our team work on this thing pretty much round the clock. We've been busting our butts to get it to here, and we are just about to fire this thing off. But before we do that, we got to do a full electronic system checks with the Motec system, make sure everything is working good. We got to check for fuel leaks, make sure we don't have any of those. That could be a big problem. And then we got to do a proper oil pressure startup procedure before we light this thing off, and we're going to go to it right now. I'll start you off here underneath the hood with a quick rundown of what we got going on here. We did all of the vacuum lines here in Nomex with aluminum AN fittings. Now all of this is for the boost controller for the Motec system. Now normally this would be just a vacuum hose here with a little hose barb on it, but we went the extra mile and drilled and tapped, made these distribution blocks here so that we don't have the ability of a hose popping off anywhere in the system. That would be hard to get at. So we've eliminated that problem there. This stuff is Nomex. It's fireproof. It's what they make safety suits out of, like fireproof suits. Really cool stuff here. This is the igniters for the Motec here, the barrel sensor for the Motec system here. Moving along this car, you can see the top of the Penske shocks here. And we got obviously our twin innovative ball bearing turbos on our twins turbo header here, really bitchin'. We got these alloy racing covers here, which is really cool. These are Inconel turbine heat shields, custom made for this setup here. Really, really trick stuff. Got a giant PWR radiator on here. Got giant Spall fans, got an ATI crank dampener. You guys have seen what's inside the engine. You know it's all good stuff. The intake manifold here is insane. This thing is all custom, handmade here. There's about 6 weeks of work in this thing. It's incredible. This is an innovative core. It's 12 inches high, 2 feet wide, 4.5 inches deep, and Kaz made these end tanks for it here. We had Brian Kono notch the frame here so that we could bring our intercooler pipes all the way up so that we'd have a shorter run into the intake manifold and from the turbos into the intercooler. This is the fuel pressure regulator from Weldon. How the fuel system works is we have a Weldon pump in the back that's feeding a dash 10 onto each side of the rail, one there and one here. We've got a dash 8 return line and another dash 8 return line coming out of the rail, going into the Weldon regulator, and then a dash 8 all the way back into the fuel safe cell. And that's the complete fuel system on the car. You know, my brother just got finished telling you guys that everything was custom made for this car. If it wasn't made by the manufacturer for it, it was made right here in the shop. And anytime you see a weld in this car, you know that I did it myself, and I do it with my single wave 350, my baby. And if you guys at home don't have access to a machine like this and cannot weld, what you want to look for when you have somebody weld some aluminum for you is that you get good penetration so that it doesn't blow up. It should be dripping through on the inside a little bit, and you should have a nice pretty looking bead like that that should end up looking like a stack of shiny dimes. If you can make wiring into a work of art, this guy at Motec pulled it off, and he does it every day for a living. It's so beautiful of a harness, we needed to look at it before we put it in the car. So we laid it out on the floor and just took a step back and looked at it. It is absolutely a work of art. It's almost a shame to put it into the car. This thing runs on sequential injection and sequential ignition. There's a timed event for each firing of the injector and each firing of the plug. If you were to mix up one of those wires, it would cause a catastrophic engine failure, hands down. You've slept 4 hours now in the last 48 cars. Yes, that explains my absolute delirium. You get to a point where you're running out of energy and it's like, man, this is beating the crap out of me, but then you get to a point where you hear the car turn over and light off a little bit and boom, a little exhaust note, and boom, right back up on the pipe, energy, deluxe, adrenaline running for the next couple hours after that. Coffee doesn't hurt either. We're going to get some oil pressure. These guys are going to be measuring cylinder pressure. They're going to try to set the CRIP, which is the crank reference indicating position, correct?
Yeah, we got to basically tell the ECU where the crankshaft is.
Right. See, because everything is always a little bit different, it's really important that we get the timing right as far as when the plug fires in relationship to TDC. So we need to set that CRIP right now. Crank reference indicating position.
Disconnect the ignition modules just so there's no way we can get a spark while we're just trying to get oil pressure.
It's like 2 degrees off, man. Really close.
It's probably close enough to start.
I'd say so. Yo, gentlemen, are you guys ready to do this for real?
Yeah,
all right, let's do this.
What?
You got a wastegate spring in here, and it basically sets the seat pressure at which the spring will release at, and this is about a 9-pound spring in there. So the added boost pressure that's going to the top added onto the 9-pound spring dictates the wastegate operation. So what we're going to do is we're going to cram that down there so that that wastegate does not want to open until the very last second in which the boost controller, the Motec, tells it to open. So that way we get all the boost available. All right, it's been a while. I can't wait. We're all really excited. It's time to do the startup procedure, and we're gonna hear this thing live any minute now. Right after we start up an engine for the first time, or after we get back from a racetrack, we cut open the oil filter, see what's going on the inside. This way we could get a good idea if there's any engine damage that's taking place that we would not normally know about. I could also get a good idea of the condition of the engine without actually taking it apart and inspecting the bearings and the piston rings, because if there's something going wrong with them, they'll be in here in the oil filter. We use conventional junk oil when we start up an engine for the first time. Synthetic oil is actually too slippery and doesn't allow an engine to break in properly. So your regular non-synthetic El Cheapo oil is perfect for the first couple hundred miles. After the engine sees about 1,500 miles, you could probably put synthetic into it. Should be broken in by then, and then you can really start to lean on it.
Twins Turbo, these guys are Supra gurus from way back. They've been doing it pretty much, that's why we wanted to get involved with them, was they know Supras better than anyone else, so we sort of adopted the project, and this is my first time seeing it. It's impressive, I mean, to say the least. We're calling it the Triple Crown project. It's 1,010-1, which is 1,000 horsepower, 10-second barrier in the quarter mile, and 1 G on the skid pad, 1 lateral G, which is pretty rare for a Supra because a lot of Supras you can't get them to handle too.
You know, Super Tuner TV is reality TV for the automotive junkie. Yeah, the reality is we spent the last 6 days and nights here at our shop assembling this car from a roller to this beast that you see sitting in front of you here today. Now, the reason we did that is so that you, the home viewer, could follow us through the whole project. We made 500 horsepower at only 10 pounds of boost on the Dynapack. That's to the tire. We got to wait a while to season the engine before we can turn it up real good. All that action is going to take place in Super Street Magazine and on superstreetonline.com. Make sure not to miss it. Until then, we are out of here.
In the words of the night, God never meet us.